So great to be back here with you. Little known fact about why the donuts that you just ate are so good. It's not just the frosting, but it's because the Oil City water, ironically, is actually some of the best in the state and wins awards all the time. Now, why would a greasy place called Oil City have fantastic water? And it's actually much better than Franklin, to be fair, okay? It is. Everybody knows that. Franklin's better than other things, but our water is Class A. Sorry, Ken. Now, why is that? Because in the old days, like most communities here, they couldn't take the water from the river because of the contamination of Oil Creek going way back, because it had naturally eroded into a shallow oil pool. That's how they knew where to drill in 1859. So they had to go north of the city to artesian wells, and that's why Oil City water is so fantastic. And most of the time, I didn't even have to filter it when I was a kid. My father still doesn't really most of the time. Now, how does that relate to donuts? Because the quality of water is so vital to baked goods, as we know from New York bagels, right? That's what makes Oil City donuts so fantastic. So that's why every time I take them to Washington, D.C., they disappear from my office like that. And Scott Hutchison just told me that they opened a branch down in, he said, Cranberry Township, right? And they sold out very quickly in the first day. This kind of stuff sells itself. And if we can tap into this kind of potential in Oil City and other things, I think the sky's the limit. Without further ado, I'm going to hand things over to my very, very good friend, Elizabeth Stelle from the Commonwealth Foundation. Commonwealth Foundation is one of our old partners here. They're great, and I'm going to let her focus on this in terms of a fireside chat, and she can tee it up. But I would also like to say that Elizabeth, much deservedly, just had a promotion at the Commonwealth Foundation to Director for Policy, correct? Yes, so without further ado, Liz, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. And welcome back for our second conversation of the morning. We're going to try to stick to those same themes, touching on affordability, reliability, and conservation. And this is going to be more of what our representatives are hearing from their constituents as we are in a very exciting time in the energy world. A lot of things have changed in the last 12 months, especially at the federal level. So I wanted to hear directly from the source some of the things that people in quote-unquote rural America are saying about energy issues, and we can maybe go into some things that are happening down in DC as well. But really want to frame this up as a conversation about how Pennsylvanians are looking at this new landscape. Obviously, we're in a very special place today, the birthplace of, not just the modern oil industry, but you could say the modern energy industry. Pennsylvania, a state that's been at the forefront not just of oil, but of nuclear, and now at the forefront of natural gas. I mean, we're constantly innovating. We have a long accolade of first and biggest and best, but we're not done yet. There's still lots of opportunity. So wanted to spend the next about 35 minutes picking your brains, what you're hearing on the ground, and then we'll have hopefully time for a couple of questions from the audience as well. So, first, very different landscape from where we were 12 months ago when we were gathered here in 2024 talking about energy issues, especially on the federal side. I've heard them, I think, the three horsemen of energy dominance, I think is what I've heard, Secretary Wright, Lee Zeldin, and the other secretary, Burgum, thank you, referred to, men that seem to be very focused on responsibly tapping in to the resources that we have in this country. And at Commonwealth Foundation, we believe that Pennsylvania is not just at the forefront of energy dominance, for our own people, but we are key to energy dominance for the entire world, and safe, clean energy, all that good stuff. So tremendous opportunity here. So on the federal side, what are you seeing after this conversation and now some actions around actual deregulation? Yes, regulation can be good. We need some level of regulation, but what impacts are you seeing? I know it's a little early, but what impacts are you seeing from the land shift changes that we're seeing, particularly from the EPA?
Well, I think First of all, you have to set the background, just the amount of stress that people were feeling over the last 4 years. Energy costs up by at least 20%. As chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, that was just decimating to the hardworking families to provide us food and fiber, provide us food security and national security. And I think as of about a year ago, last November, a sense of relief, knowing that it was not going to be easy, that prices go up, costs go up overnight, and they come down slowly. But they do come down, and they come down with the right policy, and that's just across the board. Especially being, I'm very proud to represent. I love to remind my Texas friends. I represent the original energy district, right? 1859, Drake Well. Before that, I have more abandoned mine sites in my congressional district than the other 434 districts added together, but it was the coal that we mined that really provided fueled the industrial revolution and allowed us to provide the arsenal of democracy to win 2 world wars. And then I also remember when I was first running, just 2 years before my friend here, and I heard about this woman that lived north of Interstate 80. I really was anxious to meet her because everybody was really excited about this woman called Marcellus. Turns out she had a twin sister, Utica. It's just, and all that to be concentrated in this 1/3 of landmass known as the Pennsylvania 15th Congressional District. And so my constituents are really excited. We have been at the crossroads for some time, and unfortunately we've been taking the wrong path because leadership makes a difference. We've worked hard. The Republicans in Congress, in all circumstances, when we had a Democrat in the White House and even when we were serving in the minority, we worked hard to advance in all the above and all the below energy policy because we believe that God gave us these gifts to be able to fuel our economy, and especially representing rural districts. Because we commute not just to work, we commute to pick up our mail and to buy groceries. So it's gas prices, it's home heating. It's coaling in the summer times. It's the cost. Well, energy is actually, I think, is the number 2 cost in any business after personnel. And so to be at a crossroads where we actually have an administration that is leading us in the right direction, that has a vision. Now I want to correct you, 3 horsemen. I want to throw a horsewoman in. Sure. Brooke Rollins, Secretary of Agriculture. We. As chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, we have an energy title in the Farm Bill, Title IX, and it's important. The REAP program, Rural Energy for American program, the support for biofuels, taking something that used to be I'll just give one example, something that used to be a real liability, that would be manure, and now it becomes a revenue line. It's an asset, and it has when you generate energy using methane digesters and you refine that energy, it actually has a lower carbon level than everything else. Maybe not, perhaps water power, hydro, but everything else. And so there's just so many incredible, exciting opportunities right now.
Thank you. Representative Kelly, I know you've done a lot of work, particularly on regulation. And so, as you're seeing changes at the federal level begin to trickle down, are you seeing any changes in the type of regulatory environment that people are facing at the federal level? And how is that manifesting itself in your district?
Yeah, and thank you, Elizabeth. First of all, congratulations as you're moving up and taking on more responsibility. I think that GT hit on everything because everything is about energy. And when you don't have to rely on anybody else anywhere in the world for your energy, what kind of a position does that put you in? Well, the answer is in a position of leadership. We're looking now at opportunities going into the future that's going to require more energy than we ever could have imagined before. And GT already talked about everything below and everything above. Let's look at everything that's available, and it's the cost of it. It's the cost of it. If nothing else, we have watched government getting in over their head. And I see a lot of people, and GT and I, we feel the same as, I wish we would get people serving in office that had actually been in that business as opposed to professional politicians who've done nothing but make policy but have never been in the private sector and find out how hard it is to get through that. Hard enough on its own, but then when you start over-regulating these people, and then you go back and say, well, you know what, I don't understand it. We need more revenue. I said, you let us be more profitable and you'll get more revenue because we only tax revenue, profitable revenue. We don't tax the cost of operation. So when your cost of operation soars, and energy is a big source of that, everything else goes up with it. So I think last November, I think the American people made a really important decision now, and I don't want to get wrapped around the axle on blue versus red or red versus blue. How about if we just stick to the red, white, and blue issues? The red, white, and blue faces challenges from the rest of the world. The worst actors are out there waiting for us to stumble and fall. When America is strong, when America is independent, when the rest of the world knows if something bad goes on, the Yanks are going to be there because we always are. But you can only do it if you're economically sound. So I get to work with GT on some things because he handles everything. I don't know. When I look at him and trying to put together, we talk about a farm bill and agriculture bill. People say, that's really interesting. I said, well, it would really be easier if it was just about agriculture. And I look at everything else that's in there, and now I'm on Ways and Means, and people ask me, well, what's Ways and Means? I said, well, that's just a lot of ways to be mean. We handle tax policy and trade policy and Social Security and so many different things. But at the end of the day, it's the cost of operation that falls on the shoulders or on the backs of hardworking American taxpayers. Why would you ever put policy into place that's going to make it more difficult for you to compete globally, or it's going to make it harder for people to be profitable, which at the end affects the amount of revenue that the government takes in? Now, I love it when people talk about, well, you're talking about federal taxes. I said, you know, oddly enough, the same people write the same check for everything. All your local taxes, all your county taxes, all your state taxes, all your federal taxes, it's by the same checkbook. It's by the same checkbook. And it's like, when are we going to realize that for all the benefits we supply, the most important thing we can do is be able to be profitable, lower energy costs, and ability to do anything we want, anywhere, without any bad actors depending on them to sell us something, and that's how they sustain whatever mission they're on. We are independently wealthy when it comes to energy. It all started right here. We did a post office naming, and I was surprised because early on, I always called him Colonel Drake. You know the hardest part about getting the post office named? Colonel Drake was never in the Army.
Yep.
Militia.
And you have to have all members of the Pennsylvania delegation okay it, or you can't get it done. So they came to me and said, you know, we've got a problem. One of the other folks from out in eastern Pennsylvania, it wouldn't be from western PA, right? Anyways, is objecting to the fact that you want to name a post office after Colonel Drake. And she just doesn't believe that that's proper because he was never in the Army. I said, somebody quick call the Kentucky Fried Chicken people. Colonel Sanders wasn't in the Army either. Let's change the name on every chicken leg and everything else that's out there. I guess what I'm getting down to is, and President Reagan said it best, when they said, what is the problem? Government is the problem. Over-regulation, over-taxation, over involvement in things. I guarantee you, none of us, at the level that we're at, if you were $36 trillion in debt or $37 trillion in debt, those are not the people I would go to talk to about how should I run my business. I'm just trying to stay alive. So I think we put a terrible burden on everybody in the country right now when it comes to taxpayers, but the regulation is the thing that makes it tougher than anything else. And I just would say that the rest of the world depends on us over-regulating this industry so that they can be more competitive, and we have to rely more on somebody else in the world who doesn't really like us but wants to see us stumble and fall. I don't want to rely on people that don't like us for our energy supply. So this is really timely what you're doing, and it's fabulous. Thank you.
Well, and Liz, just kind of a flashback to when EPA was created, beyond the EPA, the regulators, just the nature of the regulators, their experience. My review of history is that those early folks who went into this new regime of providing oversight and regulation, which really was meant to be more helpful than punitive. The people that get hired, the regulators, had experience in the field. The people that were regulating the coal industry worked in the coal industry, and we've lost that. That's something that we should impress upon the administration. They get, the administration chooses who they hire for regulatory purposes. But today we hire a lot of folks with book learning. They've had no practical experience in the field. I've heard nightmares. Well, some of the craziest stuff was regulations of coal mining, where somebody was cited because they didn't have wheel chocks under the car tires that were parked in the parking lot in front of the office. You know, we have regulators with book learning but no practical experience. So, and there's pressure to produce something, right? You know, one way I describe that is they eat what they kill. So they got to find something that they can punish and penalize in order to justify their assistance. I think we can do a lot of correction if we had an administration that filled the ranks, be it EPA or wherever it is, USDA, you know, the mining industry. If we really went back to the days where we did our best to recruit from the industries. And I know that's harder because the pressures that this overregulation has done means there's less qualified people working in those fields today. But I do believe that's a huge part of this.
Yeah, it's a partner to help you stay compliant versus a gotcha sort
That's
of
right.
mentality. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, seriously, everybody here, you all have resumes. Why would we put people in a position to make policy that has never been on the field, have never done what they're making policy for, have more degrees than a thermometer, know everything that ever has been written on anything that's ever been out there, but they've never actually done it. They've never actually been there. And I've always thought, and he and I talk all the time, I mean, look, the current administration is made up of people who have resumes for the field that they are now operating in and setting policy for. That is absolutely critical. You can't get promoted to an administration piece because you've been in the party longer than anybody else. You need to be there because you have the depth of knowledge, you have an understanding of what it takes to be successful, and you're willing to go ahead and walk away from that job. And I got to tell you, getting approved to be in these positions, it is incredible. You've got to drop everything that you were doing and step aside while a Senate decides on whether they're going to approve you or not. They can leave you in the hallway for months or a year or longer,
Or 4
just
years,
waiting
last
to
administration.
get approved. And people say, I don't know why you guys don't get things done. I said, well, I can tell you, but I don't think you want to hear it. Most famous line in any movie is Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men, is that you can't handle the truth. The truth is we have become such a big, big government with so many people interfering with policy that have never actually done what they're writing policy for. And we're saying, geez, I don't know why it's so difficult. And the answer is, it isn't. Just get the right people, put them in the right place, look at what they've done, check out their resumes. If they are somebody that you can trust, if they are somebody that has actually been through that, and I honestly believe nobody should be in any of those places unless you come through the private sector and worked on a commission-only salary and lost your job at least once through no fault of your own. That's the private sector. And if you haven't been through that, you have no idea what it's like in order to get through these things. So I think for he and I, we've both been there, done that. There's a couple times in my life when we were doing the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, Chairman Brady was talking about it, and it dawned on me, and I said, you know, Chairman, there's been 2 times in my life I have not paid a penny in taxes. He goes, that's interesting, Mike. How did you do that? I said, well, we lost money that year. We almost went out of business. And when you don't make money, when you're not profitable, you don't pay taxes. Now you pay all your real estate taxes, all your wage taxes, all the rest of the things that we're taxed on. But it is incredibly important for people in the private sector to be profitable because you can put that money back into whatever you do. It's the same, all of you parents are out there. You can only educate your children if you have the ability to pay for their education. So a lot of this stuff,
Yeah.
this isn't hard math. This is pretty much just plain math.
Right.
Just keep people who don't know what they're doing the hell away from things that they mess up with, and then they said, well, listen, it wasn't our fault. The voters put us in there.
Well, and while there are, lots of, I think, good questions being asked and some challenges to a lot of the policies that we've put in place in the recent past as to, are they still needed and are they doing more good than harm?
That's right.
There is an emerging challenge with rising energy costs,
Yeah.
right? So while the policy landscape is shifting, no one can deny that energy is getting more expensive here in Pennsylvania. And there's federal components, there's state components, there's local components. There's a lot of things in the soup here. But what are you hearing from your constituents about their concerns, or what they see as the source of these rising issues? And we can get into solutions if you want, but I'm really curious to see how Pennsylvanians are thinking about these rising energy costs, because we're hearing it across the country, and we're still below the national average. But as a major electricity producer, people instinctively wonder, we have so much power here, why am I paying so much? How is that manifesting itself in your districts?
In my district, and I think in Mike's as well, and in a number of other districts, we're really blessed with our rural electric co-ops. Rural electric cooperatives they're just great organizations, right? They're customer governed. They put on the best picnics you could ever imagine, a picnic for 7,000 people. And then they really are. And they have some of the lowest cost of energy. They use but I think not just the rural electric co-ops, but all the power companies, the ones that do it right use a diverse portfolio, which is just really smart. And they really want to have access to more. The thing is, the cost, it's pretty simple economics, I think, right? It's supply and demand. And demand is going up. I hear a lot about data banks and some nightmares about some data banks. A lot of it driven by the crypto industry. And believe it or not, as chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, I have jurisdiction over crypto. I think I had hair when I started working on that. Now it's just cryptocurrency from the standpoint of when it's a commodity and when it's traded, but that's a big part of crypto, and therefore I'm a leader legislatively when it comes to cryptocurrency. And it just takes a lot of energy to be able to produce that, and some of them is not real sophisticated, and that's why we need to be smart about this. There's, I think in this county, at least one situation in this county where the data bank, the computers are really driven by a generator, a diesel generator, which is really loud and it's close to a farm. And I know at least in the past it was really disturbing to the livestock, but the energy demands is just increasing significantly. And so that's why we have to be really smart about supply. That's why we need to address, and we have been, and the administration, I think, is doing a great job of addressing overregulation. Lee Zeldin, I love the fact that the administrator at the EPA is not only a personal friend, but that he has our cell phone numbers, and that's a good thing.
Not always.
Well, maybe not always. Usually.
And Penny probably agrees with that. You'd like to have at least one day off, right,
Yeah,
Penny?
usually it is. But here's the thing. We cannot sit back and gloat and say, okay, at least for the next little over 3 years, we're in the catbird seat when it comes to energy. We've got a president. We have a team, a cabinet team, a leadership team that really understands how important affordable, accessible energy is to this nation and to our future. But the fact, and and knowing President Trump like we do, he's going to do absolutely everything he can to make that happen. But the problem is, it's temporary. The real solution is to work, and we're trying to do this, obviously, work hand in hand with the administration, because we need to codify. We need to put into law the initiatives that he is taking. And without that, maybe as simple as the next election, it all goes away when it's just by executive order. Now, I will say, really proud of the president. Right out of the chute, that executive order, I don't remember what the number was, but it was basically declared an energy emergency for the nation. And it was very comprehensive in terms of addressing overregulation. Within that, it was year-round E15. I mean, it was just, sustainable aviation fuel was a part of that. There was just so much. And I think you all recognize this. We have an administration that is unlike any administration ever in the past. They had a what I call a 4-year dress rehearsal, right? They figured out what to do, what not to do, who to trust, who not to trust. And then they had 4 years. I mean, I really appreciate the man's confidence, because he formed the America First Policy Institute in order to develop policies to be able to implement whenever he would win the next election and get back into office. The confidence level is, you're just really got to be a fan of that. And that's why on day one or day 2, 3, 4, every day actually, he has hit the ground running. And he did that with energy right up front back in January with that energy emergency declaration executive order they signed in, which was just not declaring it was an emergency. They listed the solutions, and it was broad and it was deep, and I think, and it will be effective as those are implemented.
Yeah, so another thing, there's an emerging data center phenomenon. I feel like maybe almost every panel over the next 2 days will probably say the word data center at some point, so we'll say it, data center, data center. That in Pennsylvania especially, this is a very hot topic. I think this weekend I saw another one that Town Energy was potentially proposing in the northeast part of the state. And it's right now we're trying to figure out what's what here. There's all kinds of projections on how much power we're going to need, how much of that is true, how much of that's going to come to fruition. We want to make sure that we don't create stranded costs for ratepayers, right? Overbuilding infrastructure and then not needing it. It's a big issue, and it spans state, federal. It requires all the partners to come together and figure out what does smart policy look like in this space. So, are you involved in data center projects in your districts? What are you seeing on the ground there in terms of folks coming to you, talking to you? And Western Pennsylvania, I think, has an advantage. We generate a lot of power. We know how to build power plants. It's sort of something that's generally more accepted here than in other parts of the state. How is that playing out locally? Well,
the only thing I can say, when I first got into office, GT had already been for 2 years. And we were talking about Pennsylvania and be the Saudi Arabia of natural gas. He had a hearing on that. He brought all these people in. So I'm talking back in 2011, 2012, we were looking at opportunities just from Marcellus Shale and thinking, what could this mean then to the American economy? If you don't have to rely on anybody else in the world for energy, because nothing starts without it, and there's nothing out there that doesn't play a role in what is the cost of powering up whatever it is you need to power up. If you can keep your costs down, if you can have more than anybody else and use it the right way, you can contain that whole market. You can grab a bigger market share. And what I mean by that is never should America be in a position with all the gifts from God that we have to rely on bad actors to power up anything. By us being able to do that ourselves, we make the people that depend on us around the world more confident that if something does happen, America is going to be here for us. When we lose that edge, we lose America. And I think from when I first got here, when GT was pushing this stuff, and my wife's family was involved in the natural gas business, and they actually started up in Titusville. When you look at all the opportunities, and people like, well, this was, and I said, it's a gift from God. Once you have that gift from God, what do you do with that gift that God gave you? You can sit back and say, oh, well, we're going to do this or we're going to do that. The answer is we can do anything we need to do to make life easier or more abundant for the people we represent. That's the whole essence of America. That has always been the essence of America. God has blessed us with assets that nobody else has, but he's also blessed us with a way of life and a way of thinking that the rest of the world looks at. And while I'm saying some of them look at it and they're very upset with the position, there's no other reason. Why did people come to America to begin with? It was for opportunity. And how do we continue to go on that path? Taking all the gifts that God has given us and use it to the best possible way we can. Don't be frivolous with it. Don't waste it. But be frivolous with it. And look at what we've done now. Look what we get more out of any measure of energy that you could possibly imagine than we did years ago. It's phenomenal, and it's our opportunity right now. It's up to he, and it's up to me, and it's up to we in order now to make sure that next generation, we don't let them down.
There's a lot of discussion on data banks. And it comes in the form of both challenges and exciting opportunities, I think. There's no denying the need for it with AI, with cryptocurrency. I mean, the need for increased energy production is significant. The challenge is, I think, do we have a grid that can handle it?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
We don't.
If it was all on the grid, I don't believe it will. I think we have worked on trying to make the grid resilient for years. There's still a lot of work to do with that, but it can be fragile.
Yeah.
The opportunities, let me talk about some of the opportunities that are exciting, and they're exciting opportunities especially for those of us here in Pennsylvania. And I just a short checklist I put together. One is, how many natural gas wells have we drilled that are not on a pipeline? They're capped, maybe flaring, but capped, and which doesn't do the subsurface landowner any good. They have to live with the inconvenience of the surface structure, hopefully on the side of the field and not in the middle of a field, although sometimes it doesn't time up that way. How many of those could be tapped into with a data bank that would be built in proximity to a natural gas well that is not on a pipeline, but has plenty of gas to provide, to be able to generate the power. The advent and the development of modular nuclear, really exciting. The opportunities, they're safe, they're compact, and to be able to be small enough to be able to fuel, not just a data bank, but an entire manufacturing site, that it could be off the grid. But in terms of a data bank, it would be able to serve that. The biofuels, it is amazing with what can come off of dairy farms. Penny and I had the opportunity to visit, and as chairman of the House Ag Committee, I visited 42 different states and one territory, preparing for the Farm Bill, which Mike helped us pass as a part of the One Big Beautiful Bill, 80% of it. Farm Bill 1.0, all done. Huge for our farmers, a great investment. But during one of those, we were in the Central Valley of California, and we were with a colleague of mine whose family dairy farms, and a large dairy farm, actually. And we were out at the methane digester, and he said, "Climb on here." It was like a big bounce house. And I'm thinking, this could be fun, but if it tears, I know what's underneath. It's not going to be good. But we did, and and all the methane that comes off of the manure comes in, they refine it, they do the digester, the solids go back to the farm. It's used for bedding for it's clean, it's used for bedding for the cattle, makes them more comfortable. The energy that comes off, all the energy off of that one farm fuels all the Amazon trucks in that part of California. Back to Pennsylvania, stay away from the left coast. But we've got a lot of dairy farms here. Now they're small. Digesters don't always work, but we can work smarter, right? We can take and have one central digester to where maybe we have 12, 15 average-sized dairy farms in Pennsylvania, which is about 97 cows, not large enough to be able to, support the infrastructure of a methane digester. And two things have happened. Number one, manure is now a revenue line. It also takes the regulatory liability off the farmers because it gets picked up every day and brought to this digester. And third, it produces carbon negative energy that can be used for data banks or anything else that we might want to be able to support. And then finally, I'll throw in there, I'd mentioned about the number of abandoned mine lands, which we're doing a great job of cleaning those up. We just need to get the bureaucrats in Washington to lose their grip on that trust fund that we started in 1977. We have the money to clean up a lot of abandoned mine lands, but the Washington bureaucrats don't want to let go of those monies, even though it was contributed by the coal-producing companies since 1977. Within the reclamation process, those slag piles, the coal that is remined could be used to produce energy, and again, could be tied into data banks. And the part I like most about that? All four of those solutions are in rural areas.
Yes.
They're in remote areas. They're not in urban areas. They're not in suburban areas for the most part. And we can bring jobs and energy production back to rural Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and I want to tell one last sort of success story that I think goes along with this push towards smart regulation, towards letting the market come up with innovative solutions. In Pennsylvania, from 22 to 23, we reduced our carbon emissions by 10.8%. Yeah, 10.8%. It was a record, and we did it without constraints like RGGI, Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, and some of the other heavier-handed regulations that other states are using. So I think that's a testament that we can do things right. We can also make our energy more affordable if we have the right sort of regulatory touch. And let Pennsylvanians innovate, which I think is a theme I'm hearing in the conversation today. So we have time for one, maybe two questions if they're quick. I think right here in the...
You just wait for the microphone to come to you.
It's come, yep.
Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom, your time with us. You noted the abundance the U.S. has of energy, and we really do. We have coal, oil, natural gas, and other primary energy. We're really blessed with that. There's a lot of talk lately, though, about metals and minerals, because we import steel, aluminum, cement, about half of our copper, which is very critical, and other critical minerals, rare earths, and so forth. There's beginning to be talk now about this tie between minerals and energy. You need minerals and metals to produce energy, but we need energy to produce the minerals and metals. What is your thinking about critical minerals and this tie between minerals and energy?
Well, at a very basic level, let me start out. I have been working with folks mostly in the Clearfield County area. This was under President Obama's Department of Energy, the Fossil Fuels Division. I'm not sure it was the favorite division of that administration, of the Department of Energy, but the professionals there were just excellent, and they are in terms of researching and identifying the amount of critical rare earth minerals, critical metals that are in our coal seams. Not all coal seams and not all slag piles, but specifically it's sort of in that Clearfield County area. Is sort of the epicenter of it, and more than enough. And it's been interesting to watch over the past 10 years, I guess, the evolution, because we had, the government helped to identify that, but the government is not going to be the one to help us access it. That's where we need the private sector. And it just feels like we're getting closer and closer now in terms of, and we've yet to see a refinery built yet to withdraw that, but there is amazing amounts of different metals and minerals in those energy pockets. And then, as you said, it takes energy to produce that, and we need those rare earth minerals in terms of our well, they're just critical for national security, for communications, for most medical diagnostic equipment. Our cell phones, we walk around them every day with, unfortunately, some of us have 2 cell phones and that we carry around, and in many of our weapon systems, our airplanes. So the connection is really significant. And we saw just recently what happened this past week, where there was a threat by China that they were going to stop all exports. And I have to say that's a huge threat to our national security. So I'm glad we have President Trump at the negotiation table. I don't think there's anybody who negotiates harder and better than what he does. And I will say that those things are important, but also food is important. And China has a lot of bellies, billions of bellies to be able to fill. And the United States plays a pretty important role in that. And so we have some leverage here, and I think we have the right negotiator.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, because I think the reason you brought this up is you realize we've given away a lot of those rights. Now, don't try to figure out why it is we did what we did. We did it a long time ago, thinking that we would be better off if we shared with the world everything that we have an abundance of and let people take control over those things. It's the most wrong-headed thing you can have. And that's, I mentioned this earlier, please, I don't want you to be offended by this, but if you don't get more people from the private sector serving these elected offices, why would you be surprised that people who have spent their whole life studying how to play the game as opposed to being on the field and actually playing the game as to what it is that we should do? It's a combination of both. We have given up so much of what we already had in excess to other people and relied on them. There's a reason why China was in the strong point that was in. During the pandemic, who was it that we were looking for help? We were looking to China, the same people that unleashed this thing. We were looking to them for the medical supplies that we needed and saying, well, they used the philosophy as charity begins at home. We'll take care of our people before we take care of you and the rest of the world. This is how wrong-headed you can be. I'm not telling people don't be one of somebody who doesn't want to help anybody else. Yeah, do. But you know what? Charity does begin at home. When we control our own destiny, we control our future. And I look at that and I think, why were we so foolish in the past to walk away from those positions and then rely on people who can't wait for us to pass as to be the ones that are going to supply us with it? We've looked at this time and time again and said, oh my God, what were we thinking? What were we thinking? I love all this stuff, this kumbaya stuff. I want to hold hands with everybody in the world. I want to help everybody in the world. But I want to make sure that my kids, my grandkids, and our future is as safe as it can be. It begins at home with a strong America that understands our position that we're in and understands the fact is you're only strong if you keep yourself strong.
Yeah. Well, that's all the time we have. So can you please help me in thanking our congressman for coming and sharing
you
his
all.
time?
Liz, thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
All right, pal.
Giving away so much stuff. I don't understand.
Great job. Thank you very much, Congressman. I'm glad you all get back to the budget and the impasse. Yeah, somebody was saying something about if we're going to have a budget, the federal budget or the Pennsylvania budget sooner. Liz, do you have any money on that?
Place your bet.
Okay. Anyways, thank you very much, gentlemen. Thanks, Liz, for the great moderation. What we'll do now is, so one of the complaints about last year, and it wasn't just from my dad, was that we overpacked the schedule. We also have more comfortable chairs this year, so we got that going for us as well. So what we're going to do now is we're going to adjourn next door, so that'll be coming out the front doors here to the left, to the Barbara Morgan Harvey Center for the Study of Oil Heritage at the Sewer Library. And you've got to go in and see it, especially if you're in the energy industry, because they just have all sorts of interesting things in there that they're busy now trying to apply for grants and so on to digitize. And I was fortunate enough to write a recommendation for a number of those this year. I think it's a real asset that could be out there. That in the combination of, at Drake Well, getting some of the gift shop and bookstore there online also could really bring things out to the world. So please go and visit there on the way out, and then we will transit down to lunch at the Belle Lettre Club, which is a Oil City Fine Arts Club. A great place. It's at 405 West First Street, just down this very street. And we will be there for lunch starting at 12:15. We will then adjourn after that to the National Transit Building, Oil City Civic Center, for the afternoon, and then, of course, down to the Venango Museum a little bit later on. So I'll see you over at the center here, and then at lunch at the Belle Lettre. Thank you.